Yeah, good evening. We continue the our salt problems in irrigated agriculture. So we had some useful discussion in the earlier video, and we will continue that. Now let us go for what are the various sodic and alkaline salts in irrigated land. I think this we have completed here. We are now completing the salts in irrigated lands. Salinity problems are most extensive in irrigated and arid and semi-arid areas. So, what is happening in these irrigated areas? Here it is described. In every basin, prior to the introduction of irrigation, there exists a water balance between the rainfall on the one hand and the stream flow, groundwater level, and evaporation and transpiration on the other. So normally in a natural way, some rainfall occurs, goes as a runoff, something as a groundwater, evaporation occurs, everything is drained properly. And of course, if the more rainfall areas, maybe a little bit waterlogging in depressions and so on are there. But what will happen if suddenly intensive irrigation is being practiced there? So this balance is disturbed when large additional quantities of water are artificially spread on the land for agriculture. This is what irrigation do. So what we are doing through irrigation, we are simply blocking the river, diverting the huge quantities of water and then spreading over the natural land, which otherwise was hydrologically balanced, particularly salt balance was very much in tune with the natural occurrences. But what happens? Suddenly we are diverting huge quantities of water for the agriculture. An important new contribution to groundwater is introduced in the form of seepage from irrigation channels. The irrigation channels, lots of seepage occurs that will go and join the groundwater. Then from irrigation water added over and above the quantities actually utilized for meeting the evapotranspiration needs of crops. So, according to World Bank study, more than 40% of the applied water in the irrigation is not being utilized by the plants. It is almost either go as a deep percolation or evaporation. So, therefore, evapotranspirational needs are minimal and your pouring of water is more. So, naturally, all that water, at least part of it, goes and joins the groundwater. And of course, in addition, you are making so many obstructions in the natural drainage. The moment you are making irrigation means so many structures, meaning, add some kind of controlling structures. So all these things will contribute to the development in that area, and it adds more to the groundwater recharge. So ultimately what is happening? This new addition to the groundwater will raise the subsoil water level or may form as a perched water table. If the entire aquifer system right from soil to aquifer it is connected, of course it joins the aquifer, no problem. But many of these areas, if there is some kind of clay layer in between, then what will happen? A perched water table goes on, builds up. Even natural waters, even arid areas, particularly in hard rock areas also, immediately these fractures gets filled up and water table comes up. So like that, the water table builds up. Studies have shown that once the water table is within 1 or 2 meters of the soil surface, it can contribute significantly to the evaporation from the soil surface and therefore to the root zone salinization. So when the water table goes on increasing in these irrigated areas and then comes to a level of just 1 or 2 meters just below the surface, then what will happen? Evaporation occurs both from the top as well as from the root zone, that is from subsoil. So what will happen if the water gets evaporated? Salts remains in the soil. That's what will happen. Salinization occurs. Most of these irrigated lands will occur salinization only this kind of process. As the water table builds up, and then this water table is simply evaporated by these arid and semi-arid regions, and the salts remain in the soil. So salinization problems can be more severe when the salinity of the groundwater is high. Again, over and above, suppose you are adding or you are irrigating this with groundwater, what will happen? I mean, naturally groundwater is having more salts, as earlier we have discussed that, and it will add much more salts to the soil, as usually the case with arid regions. In arid regions also groundwater contains somewhat high salinity. So then this is how the irrigated land salts accumulation is done. Now, what is saline and alkaline soils? In fact, alkali soils also called sodic soils. This sodic is recently, earlier in world, it is alkali soils only. Okay, soils containing a large proportion of sodium. This is very important. Soils containing large proportion of sodium with carbonate as the predominant anion, so like sodium carbonate, are termed alkali or sodic, sodic soils. What is that? Soils containing a large proportion of sodium with carbonate as the predominant anion are termed alkali or sodic soils. Those with chloride or sulfate as the predominant anion are saline soils. But the saline soils also contain appreciable quantities of chlorides and sulfates of calcium magnesium. In both the cases, the culprit is sodium. So, we will discuss that. Normally, all these clay soils, they have a charge deficit, that is called negative, and this negative will attract the positive, this cation. This is also cation exchange we call. We will discuss that later on. So whatever it is, so this is the difference between saline and alkali soils. Normally, by physical examination, you can find saline soils are simply whitish in nature. You might have observed some white patches in your lands. I have also have my land some white patches, and even we have collected that white salt and then tasted it. It was very really like salt. And these are called, the white patches is called saline lands. Whereas yellowish patches, particularly during this lowland areas where this water is continuously flowing, because this is the water simply wash out the uplands and deposits this sodium carbonate at the low-lying areas. Usually these washermen earlier, when there was no surf or the soap, all these things, they used to for cloths cleaning, they used to have this that mixture, and then that they collect from the natural soil, that alkali soil on the top, that is a sodium color, yellowish. They collect that and then they heat with some water, and the cloths become, it acts like a detergent, So that's how you can practically observe in the field. But chemically, this is the thing. I repeat again, soil containing a large proportion of sodium with carbonate as a predominant anion are termed as alkali or sodic soils. While those with chloride or sulfate as predominant anion are saline soils. In both the cases, sodium is a culprit. So ordinarily, either type of sodium saturated soil, basically it is a saturation of soil with sodium. How it occurs, we will see later on, will support little or no plant growth. See, this is the thing. Ultimately, this is the damage. What is the damage? It supports little or no plant growth. In fact, I have seen practically all the land which is affected with this salinity or alkalinity, patches in a land, no plant growth at all. So this is the thing. But saline soils also contain appreciable quantities of chlorides and sulfates of calcium and magnesium. This is in addition to the above one. These are the things. Anyway, now sodium reacts with soil to reduce its permeability. What is happening actually here? Sodium containing soils will completely a loss of permeability within them. That means there is no movement of water. So how can the plant will extract water from it, or the soil gets drainaged? So this is the thing. Therefore, what is happening? Therefore, irrigating water should contain less sodium. Suppose we are pouring more surface water or any other water or groundwater which is containing sodium extra, then that will be much more dangerous, which is mostly found in groundwater. Normally, groundwater will have more, these salts. So So all this process is governed by this cation exchange, is the most important process which governs the accumulation of excessive sodium during irrigation with saline water. This is what the thing, and also during reclamation also actually, and reclamation of alkali soils during treatment of gypsum. So in all this process, what is the one single process, what is known as most predominant is, there are several processes no doubt, but the predominant process governing this sodium enriched soil means it is a cation exchange process, which we have to understand a little bit more about cation exchange, how it is being done. So basically now we learn there are two types of salt problems. One is saline based saline lands, and another is alkali lands. Okay, in both the cases it is sodium rich, and sodium, if it is mixed with this kind of carbonate, then it is called alkali, or if it is mixed with chloride, it's called salinity. Okay, so let us move further. Cation exchange capacity. This is how we try to understand slowly. The finest fractions of the soil particles, normally this clay dominated soils, even this salinization and waterlogging mostly occurs with clay dominated soils only. Okay, you have a certain charge deficit. That is what is that means? It is a negatively charged. So clay vesicles are negatively charged when the soil is enriched with clay. Then this charge is balanced. Okay, since it is negatively charged, how it is balanced? It is balanced by the charge of the adsorbed cation taken from the soil solution. You see, when the soil is added with some water, then this water detaches this, with some sodium. That sodium will go and sit on the soil, because the soil is having a negative charge, because it is having a clay. So the sodium cation will go and sit on that soil. These adsorbed ions on the clay phase are replaceable. It can be replaced by any other cation, even calcium, magnesium, any others. In fact, we have an order for this. We'll see that. So anyway, in either case, it is the cation is going and sitting in that place. However, the rate of reaction depends upon its chemical affinity to the soil, its valency and size. It's not that simply governed by this minus, negative and charge, all those things, but there are other things. However, the rate of reaction depends upon its chemical affinity to the soil, its valency and size, and many other things. Of course, much more chemistry we want to go in, but no time. But major thing is this one, that is the cation exchange capacity. These replaceable ions are called exchangeable cations, and there is a measure for this. The maximum adsorption capacity of the soil for cations is called cation exchange capacity, which is generally expressed in MeQ, milliequivalents per 100 gram of soil. Okay, this is expressed like this. So we will further how these cations are exchanged. Cation exchange capacity continued. An order of replaceability of any ion present on the soil can be expressed as, for example, NH4 plus is greater than, it can be Mg plus plus greater than Ca plus plus K plus Na plus potassium sodium. That means, what does it mean? This means that the Ca plus plus here will replace Na plus from the exchange complex more easily. That is the meaning. So this is the scale of replaceability. That means this side cations can replace this side cations easily. So definitely sodium is being replaced by this many of these things. In fact, sodium enrichment does not occur so easily. That is the meaning of it. But still, in the nature, when it is occurred with enriched with so much, then there is a problem. While the replacement of Ca, right, by Na is more difficult. This is the what. You cannot replace so easily the Ca by Na. Okay. In normal soils, generally, Ca, Mg, K and NH4 constitute 76, 25, 3 and 2% respectively of the exchangeable cations. That means more of them dominated by Ca, Mg, K only. Such soils are dominated by Ca followed by Mg and so on. But in the case of alkali soils, the proportion of exchangeable Na is more and increase with pH of soils. That is what exactly in the case of alkali soils, Na is more and it increases with the pH also.